One of the most anticipated movies of the summer of 2026 is Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. And as in leading up to it, because I am excited about seeing it, I've been rereading through Homer's classic work. And as I've read through it, I've been reading it as a Christian, and I've noticed a few things that have really jumped off the page that I don't think many people have. Now, let me just say that what the Odyssey is. The Odyssey is a story about a hero by the name of Odysseus who has survived the Trojan War, which Homer tells in the story, the Iliad, and it is a story of his journey back home. Uh, Odysseus has been gone for close to 20 years away from his wife and his son and his kingdom, and he is homesick. And yet, for various reasons, he is being prevented from returning to the shores of his kingdom and taking up his throne again. We, the reader, know that while Odysseus is away, his kingdom is really struggling. His son is now an adult, a son that he hasn't been able to raise or even to see grow up, is struggling to become the sort of man that his father is known to be. Both his son and his wife, let alone everyone in his kingdom, don't know that Odysseus is still alive. But Odysseus is on his way back home, and he's going from one island to another, one adventure to another. Recently, while rereading through Homer's epic, I came across a story that did in fact jump off the page for me. In it, Odysseus has landed on a mystical island that is controlled by a being, a witch, a sort of witch figure by the name of Circe. And Circe has bewitched, has enchanted some of Odysseus's crew. In fact, she has turned them into swine. And Homer is telling us something about human nature, that these gentlemen who have been lost at sea for some time have finally landed on this island. They are in search of food and water and other necessities. And as a result, they have become food. They have become animals. It's a story of dehumanization. When Odysseus finds out what's happened to a good number of his crew, he goes and finds Circe and he makes a deal with her. And in part of this deal is that Circe does agree to turn his crew back into humans. It is there we meet the youngest and the most unlucky of Odysseus' crew, a man by the name of Elpenor. And one night, when everyone ate and drank and got drunk, Elpenor got overheated. And to cool off, he climbed to the top of Circe's roof and he fell asleep. No one knew that he was there. And at first light the next morning, Odysseus rounds up his crew and they leave in a hurry. Elpenor, from atop of Circe's roof, hears the commotion, and because of his drunken stupor, he has forgotten he has climbed on top of the roof. And as a result, he is shocked by the sound that of everyone getting ready, and he falls off the roof and breaks his neck. Now, if that story sounds familiar, it is probably because you've been reading your New Testament. In the book of Acts, Acts chapter 20, Paul is preaching his last sermon to the people of Ephesus. It's a sad occasion in that people there know that it is unlikely they will ever see the Apostle Paul alive again. Paul is essentially marching to Jerusalem, which will lead, they believe, to his death. And this march towards home, Jerusalem, is where we find ourselves in Acts 20, where Paul is preaching to the Ephesians. And he, as so many preachers are prone to do, goes over the time limits. It's late at night. The fires in the upper room are causing one man by the name of Eutychus to doze off. He sits right next to the open window, no doubt in hopes that it will awaken him. He, too, wants to hear the Apostle Paul. However, sleepiness takes over, and he, like Elpenor hundreds of years prior, according to the myth, falls out of the upper room and he dies. So then we have two stories, one told by a pagan author, Homer, and another told by the evangelist Luke, telling us the story of Paul and his experiences in Ephesus. I think the parallels are obvious. And when I was reading again through the Odyssey, I thought, wow, that really jumps off the page. A story that I've not seen, or a connection I've not seen anyone else make. But this is not merely Luke retelling a myth. He's telling us something about the power of the gospel. Going back to the Odyssey, is that now that Elpenor has died, no one knows he's fallen off the roof. And so Odysseus and his crew get on the ship and they sail off. However, Circe tells them that in order to make it back to Ithaca, Odysseus' home, they will first have to do what all the great Greco-Roman epics and heroes do, is they have to go to the underworld, the realm of the dead, or the Greek word is Hades. And so Odysseus goes down to Hades, where he has to speak to a blind prophet who will give him instructions on how to get home. The first person he meets, and he will meet many fallen heroes, friends, family, and whatnot. But the first person he meets is the unlucky and the youthful Elpenor. And Odysseus is shocked by what he finds. Elpenor is in a bad state. Most notably, Elpenor doesn't want to be dead. He wants to live again. He wants Odysseus to rescue him. But the epic hero cannot. Odysseus, though a descendant of gods, is mere mortal. A hero, but a man nonetheless. And so he tries to explain to his lost friend that there is nothing he can do. Distraught, Elpenor makes one final request, something Odysseus can do. He asks that Odysseus and the crew return back to Circe's island and give him a proper burial. Actually, he asks to be burned, which would have been a traditional way to honor a fallen soldier. And that is something Odysseus can do. So what we have then is a hero stuck in the grave. We have a hero lost in the realm of the dead. And in the Greco-Roman world, Hades was not a great place to be, but it is exactly where everyone who dies goes. In fact, Odysseus meets other people there. Another notable person is his own mother. When he left Ithaca, his mom was still alive, but now this is how he finds out his mother has passed. She is a shade, she is a shadow, she is a ghost. He also meets King Agamemnon, who is the great king that led the Greeks to fight the Trojans in the first place. And he discovers, for as great of a king he was betrayed by his wife and her lover, a sad end to a mighty man. But finally, he meets Achilles himself. Achilles is everything every Greek seeks to be. Because Achilles was a man of war, he was a man of victory, but he was a man of renown. The most important thing for every Greek warrior was to be remembered, and no one is more famous than Achilles. But to Odysseus' shock, Achilles doesn't want to be in the realm of the dead. In fact, he says he would rather be at the lowest socioeconomic rung of society than to spend another day in Hades. It's a shocking story for the original readers. But to us, we look at the story of Eutychus and we see something completely different. Eutychus falls like Elpenor. Eutychus dies just like Elpenor. But the story takes a surprising turn. The text says, Acts 20, verse 10, Paul went down, this is after Eutychus has fallen in verse 9. Paul went down and bent over him, and taking him in his arms, says, Do not be alarmed, for his life is in him. And when Paul had gone up and had broken bread and eaten, he conversed with them a long while until daybreak, and so departed. And they took the youth away alive, and were not a little comforted. In other words, Paul raises Eutychus from the dead. This is one of the last stories of resurrections, or really resuscitations, we get in the New Testament. There have been several before that, and a few even in the Old Testament. This is really what sets the Christian worldview from the Greco-Roman worldview. To the Greeks, the best you can get in this world is a name to be remembered. But we all die. We all go into the grave. We all descend into the underworld, a world ruled by the god of Hades. But we worship a true and better Elpenor, a true and better Odysseus, one who left his home not to conquer a kingdom, but to build one. And he built one by conquering death itself. I think that's what Luke wants us to see. That the Greeks fear death because there's no hope for the dead. But for the Christians, because Christ is risen, Paul can proclaim, "O death, where is your sting? O grave, where is your victory?" So we, on this end of the grave, we have nothing to fear. Or as Luke put it, as he says, the youth went away alive, and the church was not a little comforted. That's the good news of the gospel. No matter what life may throw at us, no matter what difficulties we may face, Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. We worship the one who has conquered the grave, one who is the true and greater Odysseus.